Good evening. Welcome into NFL Daily, presented by Man Crates. I am Cam Rogers. That guy right there is Tom Downey.
We're not wearing the same outfit this time.
We are not wearing the same shirts. High fives to that.
The bad part is I guessed he was going to wear purple, and I thought about maybe I should wear purple to be funny.
I just need to be less predictable. That is the key for me going forward.
That's the problem.
Exactly. All right, let's go through the show here real quick. 10 trades that could happen, but probably won't.
Entertainment purposes. No one freak out, please.
Training camp predictions, as well as some juicy NFL rumors.
Yeah.
So fun show.
Good show.
All right, let's do it. So 10 trades that could happen, but probably won't. Well, this one actually seems logical. Earl Thomas going somewhere.
We're going to start with maybe the ones that could actually go down, and then we'll get to some of the more fun and more outlandish ones. And if we start with Earl Thomas, because that one continues to get buzz around it. So here's my trade proposal for you, Cam. Seattle gets a second-round pick, and the Cowboys get Earl Thomas, of course. The Earl Thomas Cowboys trade rumors will not die until A, it actually happens, or B, Earl Thomas gets a fat new contract from the Seattle Seahawks.
And that's what he wants.
Yeah,
he wants to get paid.
I couldn't agree more with you. Cowboys fans keep telling me, no, he wants to play for the Cowboys in particular. No. He wants to get paid.
Right.
He doesn't care where he plays for. This is not a Kawhi situation. This is an example of Earl Thomas wanting to get paid in a big way. I think the asking price from Seattle, if they do decide to move him, is a second-round pick. So you look at the Cowboys' depth chart now at defensive back. If you bring in Earl Thomas, it's a fun group there. Like Cheeto, Byron Jones, Jordan Lewis, Earl Thomas is now your veteran in the back end. Xavier Woods, Jeff Heath, Kevon Frazier, I think all rotate a bit. Anthony Brown is a fine number 4 corner. It may not be the most household named secondary, but it's a really good and really
good
young group too.
Yeah, sure. And meanwhile, for Seattle here, Tom, just total revamp of that back end.
Look, you do it because you're blowing it up.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a little bit more likely right now for Seattle, is that you're going to have to embrace a rebuild, or at least a mini reset. And they're already in the midst of that mini reset, because if you're not going to pay Earl Thomas, and Seattle might not want to do that, if that's the case, you can get more in a trade right now, a second-round pick, than a future third. But from the Seattle Seahawks perspective, what you could end up seeing happening is they might decide, you know what, 1 year of Earl Thomas and then getting that third-round pick next year and trying to make one more push at a playoff run is worth it. So that's kind of the back and forth there.
You see at the right side of your screen, who says no to this trade deal? Type 1 in comments for the Cowboys. Type 2 for the Seattle Seahawks. You think this is pretty fair?
I think it's fair. I think it's what Seattle would ask for, that the Cowboys would be willing to give up. But as of right now, I think it's fairly obvious. Seattle says no. I just don't think that's always going to stay the case, potentially, if this holdout continues to go along, which it might continue to do for quite some time.
Earl Thomas heading into the final year of his current contract. He wants an extension. He is not showing up, at least for now, to training camp. We'll see how long this drags out.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that Earl Thomas holdout in a little bit, but as of right now, they're in a very interesting spot, and it might be a lengthy holdout and staring contest between the two sides.
All right, so one more time. Seattle would receive a second-round pick, and the Cowboys would, of course, get Earl Thomas. How about this guy here, Shane Ray, outside linebacker for the Denver Broncos. He's been at the center of some trade rumors of late. But
I think it's more of the, oh, well, this just makes sense.
Yes.
Like Denver has Shaquille Barrett. They have Von Miller. They got Bradley Chubb. When are they going to get Shane Ray on the field, and what is his last deal? And there are several teams out there that could use another outside linebacker. You can never have too much pass rush. Denver's kind of bordering it on that end there. So I think one team that makes sense, and there is some familiarity here, how about the Rams and the Denver Broncos? Shane Ray comes over, goes to L.A. They have a simple 6th-round pick. There are some questions about the full health of his wrist, and there's the familiarity there as well. Wade Phillips knows Shane Ray pretty well, and it gives the Rams a little bit more of a constant presence on the outside as an outside linebacker for the Rams, where, yes, their interior is really good, but their edge spots they've got some room to grow overall.
Shane Ray could be on the move. It'd be an interesting move at that. The Rams are a team that really don't have elite linebackers by any means necessary, and they don't exactly need them either. And, Shane Ray could help in the depth department, all things considered. But for the Rams, once again, folks, we are going through trades that could happen, but probably won't. I actually don't see this happening.
I think Denver might try to keep Shane Ray for one more year. I think that could be the scenario there. And they say, okay, Shay, thank you. We'll say goodbye and have a good future long term. But from the Rams, if you want to keep giving away picks, I think Shane Ray makes some sense. And we'll bring up these teams depth charts here as well, but you look at what the Rams have. They're not in bad shape necessarily because they're so stacked on the interior with Donald and Sue, but you bring in Shane Ray. Now you've got a little bit more of a potential upside as a true edge rusher. Matt Longacre is also there. Is it a great group? No. You can get by because your front three, at least for the Rams, and your back four is so strong. And then for Denver, like, you're fine. Like, you don't necessarily need it. Maybe that means you bring in Jeff Holland or Rush to be your fourth outside backer along with Chubb, Shaquille, and Von Miller. But I think it's an example of a depth team, a position of depth for one team can make a deal if they're going to try and get some value back to player that long term is probably not going to be with them for much longer.
All right, the Broncos are shaping up to have a pretty good defensive year. We'll see if they, for some reason, trade away Shane Ray. We shall see. Who says no? Type A for the Rams, type B for the Denver Broncos. Let's go to the next name on our list here. And there's a big-time positional battle at the right guard position between Joshua Garnett and the former Dallas Cowboy, Jonathan Cooper. So with that, Cooper is likely to beat out Garnett. That makes Joshua Garnett pretty much expendable.
And you and I talked about this many times before, both on air and off the air. Joshua Garnett isn't necessarily an ideal fit for the Buffalo Bills or for the San Francisco 49ers because where are you going to play him? Like, he is more of a mauling run guard.
He's a man-blocking guard.
And that's not necessarily what you want in the Niners scheme. A team like the Bills, potentially, which we'll get to that protector trade here, makes a little bit more sense on that end. So,
yeah, the Buffalo Bills could certainly use some help on that interior. Of course, they lost their center in Eric Wood. Incognito is no more as well. So there's help that is needed.
There have been the rumors that Shaq Lawson could be on the trade block, which I find curious at best because it's a little earlier that they could cut Shaq Lawson, which I'm like, why? You actually lose money doing that.
I know, it makes zero sense.
He's still pretty young. Maybe they don't think he's an ideal scheme fit, but I think Lawson goes over, and in reality I think has a little bit more value right now than just Joshua Garnett because Garnett has missed some time. And for Lawson and the 49ers in particular, Cam, there's your Leo Edwards, which they really, truly don't have at the moment.
Yeah, they're hoping Jeremiah Atachu coming on over from the Chargers could help in that department. They're hoping that Solomon Thomas can help in the pass rushing ability department. And that's really it in terms of guys that can really rack up a lot of sacks. I mean, DeForest Buckner, of course, on the interior should have a good season as well. But you're not going to rely on him to get 15 sacks, 12 sacks, anything like that. Maybe he gets into double digits. But yes, the 49ers could absolutely use somebody like a Shaq Lawson as you take a look at the front five here for Buffalo. Dukas at left guard, not the worst situation in the world.
I like
Garnett
Dawkins
at right guard.
a lot.
Yeah.
And this is a double win because now you pretty much ensure, in theory, if you want to play Groy at center, you don't have to start Bodie because he is a disaster. Bills fans right now, I will promise you, you're not going to like him at all. He was a disaster for the Cincinnati Bengals. As for the Niners, it means Cooper starts at right guard. The interior is a little bit thin overall, but I think that they'll be okay if no one gets hurt. Even then, Mike Persson can play some center and guard there. The tackles, though, especially if he pans out quickly, is a good tandem there.
Absolutely. Joe Staley, the stalwart there at left tackle. Tomlinson in for a good year as well. So who says no to this deal? I think this is pretty fair. Garnett, fifth rounder, then you got Lawson.
I think that with the buzz about Shaq Lawson, I'm not ready to fully believe it because I don't think it makes enough sense from the Bills' perspective. But I've seen that happen before where something that I think doesn't make sense still ends up going down.
Dez Bryant getting cut.
Thank you, Cam. We'll talk about Dez later on in the show and the Browns' interest in him. But it's been very interesting thus far.
All right, so be sure to type 1 and 2 in the comments section, depending on what you feel about this trade proposal here. All right, as Man Crate shows us, we got Donald Penn as a potential trade target out there, maybe ushering in the Colton Miller era. You send Donald Penn away, coming off a Liz Frank surgery, and there you go.
We're not going to get to the crazy ones yet, and when everyone watching can make fun of me, and I will appreciate that. But Penn still kind of is on the this makes a little bit more sense side of things because the Raiders drafted Colton Miller. He is their long-term left tackle. Donald Penn was not happy Oakland did that. Even though you're 35 years old, why would you have so much issue there? Like, why would you be upset? Like, I kind of get on one hand, but on the other hand, like, dude, you're 35. Like, you think you're going to play till you're 40 at left tackle, coming off a foot surgery? that doesn't make sense. So I think Penn, especially if Oakland wants to clear some cap space, is a prime trade candidate, if Quinten Miller, by the way, emerges quickly.
We'll get to that trade proposal, but first you're watching NFL Daily presented by Man Crates. Do you know an awesome guy who needs a gift? At Man Crates, gifts are carefully curated like a museum, but actually exciting. We're talking about personalized barware, jerky grams, project kits, so much more. Mancrates.com is the way to go. Awesome gifts guys love. And with that, let's go to those details. Donald Penn going to Houston.
You know, we keep making fun of Houston's offensive line, and I think for good reason. So from Houston's perspective, I think this is actually a really good deal for them. Yeah, you give away a 4th-round pick, but you get a left tackle that you so desperately need because you look at their offensive line. Cam, it's a mess.
It's not good.
Are you really telling me that you're going to start Julian Davenport and Central Henderson at left tackle, right tackle, respectively? No. Go put in Penn, pair him with Fulton. It's not an elite offensive line, but you do have a good mobile quarterback behind him. You at least have a better chance to not get Deshaun Watson killed. And maybe Oakland fans think that they want more than a 4th-round pick. The big concern from my perspective is, Cam, 35 years old, 2 years left on your deal. How much are you actually going to get for Donald Penn?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's all that much.
You think now is the time while the stock is relatively high?
If you think that Quinten Miller is ready to go. If he's not, then you need to keep Donald Penn because for the same reason. You can't let Carr get killed either.
Yep.
So I think it's a bit of a win-win trade there. Oakland, I'll make it a conditional pick. If Houston makes a deep run in the playoffs, it can be bumped up to a 3rd or something like that. But I think this is about the right value for Penn. If not, maybe even too much value going back.
Going through trades that could happen but probably will not. Want to make that clear. Probably will not happen. This is the NFL, of course. You rarely see blockbuster deals.
And as we go through them, you can kind of see more and more why, okay, this is why a trade is so tough to actually pull off.
All right, let's talk about Quinten Rollins here, a guy you know very well, Tom.
This is the last of the, I could actually see this trade going down in like tomorrow. A couple of other ones we'll get to have a little bit more sense in different areas, but this one I could see like, oh, this makes perfect sense for both sides. Green Bay. They have too many corners right now. And Quinten Rollins, a 2nd-round pick out of Miami of Ohio, was really good his first year, almost playing in a linebacker-type role because they were so decimated on the interior. But he's battled injuries since then, including an Achilles. Now his future is very much up in the air. But Cam, I think Arizona needs more secondary help. Why not bring in Quinten Rollins, who could play nickel, could play outside, or even safety, which some teams wanted to draft him as. I think it's a win-win for Arizona getting that depth, and Green Bay gets something back for a player that they might end up cutting outright altogether. And again, you can look at the Packers' depth chart here at cornerback. They don't need Rollins, who barely played last year because you drafted Alexander, you drafted Josh Jackson, and you brought in Tramon Williams. That's too many bodies to pair with Kevin King plus House.
And King was a recent draft pick, too,
exactly,
really.
Second-round guy. And then Arizona, we kind of harped on this. I mentioned several times on the show, Cam.
Yeah.
I don't like this secondary. Like, your starting 4 is fine. Brandon Williams, I don't like a corner. Ben-Rookery couldn't get on the field for the Cowboys. Campbell and Ford are later-round picks. Bring in Rollins to almost be that, okay, here is our go-to extra defensive back. Do we need someone at safety? Sure, bring him in. Do we need someone in at corner? Bring him in.
Almost a poor man's Jimmy Ward. Versatile player.
Yes.
He can bounce around a little bit.
Yes, I think that's a decent comp. Not quite as maybe as big as Ward, but I think that's a decent type of scheme fit. Someone who can do a bunch of different things for you and will allow you to have a little bit more success on the outside.
All right, be sure to let us know. Type C or D. Who says no to that trade proposal? Quinten Rollins heading to the Arizona Cardinals. All right, let's have some fun here, Tom. Let's talk about Teddy Bridgewater perhaps on the way out.
This is perhaps the best example of a trade that should absolutely happen, but definitely isn't going to. But it should happen. Teddy Bridgewater, I remain a big fan of Teddy Two Gloves. I loved him coming out of the NFL draft out of Louisville. I thought he was the best quarterback in that year's class. I thought he was pretty good early on for Minnesota. Of course, there were some growing pains and some ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. But the injury really sat him and really, in reality, limited and stunted his growth. But there is one team in particular, Cam, that I think could use a new quarterback because they're in position to contend, and they can find one in Jacksonville. Because I do not like Blake Bortles. This one, look, Jacksonville made a mistake by taking Bortles over Bridgewater in the first place, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
Rectify it. Send a conditional 4th-round pick, can be a 3rd or higher, depending on how well Teddy plays, if he plays, and you get rid of Blake Bortles. I am not a fan of Blake, Cam.
So even with the extension in mind with Blake Bortles.
Don't care.
Don't care. Okay.
Get a better quarterback in there. So the Jets without Teddy Bridgewater, they're fine. They have Josh McCown, they have Sam Darnold. This assumes that McCown is healthy and Darnold is prepared to at least be a backup quarterback in year one. And then Jacksonville, Teddy is now your starter. Bortles can go hang on the bench and complain and do whatever else he wants.
What's up, Tannerly?
Tannerly's garbage. Cody Kessler hangs out as the third string where he belongs, not as a backup. It's a win-win for Jacksonville. I think your offense gets better.
Now, I feel like Jags fans are going to come after you.
Bring it.
They love Blake Bortles,
You know how good your defense is, and you didn't win the Super Bowl because your quarterback is Blake Bortles?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Teddy Bridgewater, I talked about it this morning, could end up being the starter for the Jets or on the opposite end of the spectrum, be traded away. Like, those are the options there and anything in between.
Like Blake Bortles faced stacked boxes pretty much every game because Fournette was so good, and he threw 60% completion, which was his best one ever. So at least he improved on that end.
But
he's not good. Yeah. He benefits from having a decent enough offensive line and a really, really good defense, and he still has not put up great numbers outside of garbage time. Garbage time, Blake Bortles, if you guys want a Blake Bortles compliment, is an elite quarterback.
There you go.
The issue is it's only in garbage time.
All right, so Teddy Bridgewater could be on the way out, but we're going to say probably not here on NFL Daily, but you never know.
But won't.
You never know.
So the Jags say no in that trade, by the way.
Let's talk about Odell Beckham Jr. now. The rumors around him being traded have died down, it's safe to say. But if
it happened.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure he's a little frustrated still with the lack of progress in terms of contract negotiations.
I will give Odell a lot of credit here. He has done everything correct. Like, he's shown up to camp. He still wants that big contract, but he's not holding out. He's done everything the Giants have asked him to do. But maybe the Giants decide, you know what, we really don't want to pay Odell Beckham $17, $20 million a year. And if that's the case, there are several teams, Cam, that would do that. And I got one for you that I think you'll like. The 49ers. Now, we'll get to some other receiver trades, but for this trade for the Giants, what they're more or less flipping Beckham for is a first-round pick and a early second-round pick in receiver in Dante Pettis,
whom they haven't signed yet.
Which is super weird, which we'll get to later on in the show. Maybe it's because they're going to trade him? I kid. That's not going to happen. For the Niners, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, boom, you get Beckham, Goodwin, Garcon.
That's elite.
That's incredible. Who cares that your number 4 guy is Robinson or Trent Taylor? Like, you are in great shape. The Giants, though, and this is why the Giants end up saying no. Maybe they ask for a second and third in addition to those picks. You got Shepard, Pettis, and Cody Latimer.
Latimer in the slot.
But it's okay because you save money and now focus your entire offense on Saquon Barkley.
And focus on the post-Eli era.
In reality, you kind of almost have 3 slot receivers there.
Seriously.
Shepard and Pettis can play on the outside.
Pettis is a slot receiver in his mold right now. So, yeah, I mean, I think for now the Giants say no to that, Tom. I think they're going to ask for a little more than that. But Odell Beckham Jr.
And we're here to have fun, right, guys?
Absolutely. You know what's fun? Subscribing to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/chatsportstv. We're going for 100,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen, so get it done. The link is conveniently at the bottom of your screen. We do appreciate all of the support out there. All right, let's continue along here, Tom, and talk about Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah,
could he be
big name
dealt?
Time, boys.
Yes, absolutely, an elite running back in his own right. What do you think, Tom? I mean, first of all, you know how I feel about the Steelers and what they should have done with him. But second of all, maybe Le'Veon Bell just walks into free agency next year. But hey, maybe a trade could go down.
I think that's a little bit more a more likely scenario here than a trade because A, he's yet to sign his franchise tag, and there are very few teams that can actually afford Bell right now. There aren't many that can bring on, yeah, we got room for a $14+ million contract and afford that and have it make sense for their
And then perhaps an extension after that.
And definitely an extension after that. So, and beyond that, Pittsburgh, if they were to actually shop Bell, has a very high asking price because they can compete right now and maybe win a Super Bowl, so they're not just going to give away Lev Bell. And in that scenario, they'd need at least a first-round pick and probably halfbacks back. So we'll start with one, my least favorite of the 2 trades we got here for Bell. Marlon Mack, who I love, in a first-round pick. So in reality, it ends up being a first and a fourth, which that first still might end up being fairly high. I think Mack would be a good fit in the Steelers' scheme and on offense. I'm a big fan of him, but in reality, you're going to use more of a running back by committee. For the Colts, meanwhile, well, now you got Andrew Luck and Lev Bell, a pairing, a fever dream pairing from Madden.
Toss in T.Y. as a trio, and there you go.
Good trio right there.
Yeah.
Nyheim Hines can be your backup. Turbin is suspended. Wilkins and Ferguson. And then fantasy darling Christine Michael still exists. Still technically on the roster, but he's not going to make it this year. And then for the Steelers, you kind of end up using very much a committee approach here. Marlon Mack, James Conner, Jalen Samuels. Maybe Conner's kind of more your goal line back. Mac is more in between the 20s, and then Sam is kind of almost a third down receiver, hybrid, tight end, H-back, do-it-all type player. So I think in the end, Pittsburgh would say no to this one. I think they would want more. But it was the best offer I could come up with the Colts that wasn't including multiple seconds and thirds, which they're not going to do for a player they also have to extend. And that's a big reason why, in general, you don't see these blockbuster trades. You can't give away a first-round pick and then pay someone a lot of money unless in very few cases. And if you're Pittsburgh, a first and a player might not actually be enough. It's not like the NBA where you can just trade away players and trade away firsts that actually aren't as important. A first-round pick for a latter part of the NBA is almost a mid-round pick in the NFL, like based on the actual number of picks. So that's the reason why you don't see big blockbuster trades 99 times out of 100.
A big reason why we're talking about the Colts, too, they have a lot of salary cap space to play with.
Yeah,
and to
they've got the
ingest
money.
Le'Veon Bell.
They've got all the money that they could possibly want.
Okay, so that is one trade proposal for Bell.
The second one I like a little bit more, but it was a little bit tricky based on the team's draft picks available.
Yeah, we were talking about this one earlier. So the Pittsburgh Steelers involved in a trade with the Chicago Bears. Howard goes on to Pittsburgh along with a third-round conditional pick. The Bears get Bell.
I would have liked to have given a second-round pick, but the Bears don't have one from the Anthony Miller trade.
Yep.
So that kind of thing hurts the possibility of a trade here. Now, the Bears maybe don't really need Lev Bell with Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen on the roster. But in this scenario, they upgrade and get one of the best halfbacks in the NFL. Now just wait till they play Bell and Cohen on the field at the same time. Have fun stopping that speed.
Sprinkle in a little
Anthony
Cunningham.
Miller, and Trey Burton, and Allen Robinson, and Taylor Gabriel. That's a really fun offense right there. Almost too fun. Trubisky better be great if that actually happens. So for the Bears, you get an upgrade, you can afford him. Yeah, you're giving up a third-round pick, but it's okay. You can trade down in round one or whatever, and you get Lev Bell. So from that perspective, yeah, you're giving up a cheaper Jordan Howard, but it's worth it, right?
Sure. Meanwhile, for Pittsburgh, I mean, you're fine with that backfield.
It's more than you're going to get if he leaves.
I agree.
Like the way to go about it is you're getting a third-round pick in exchange for Lev Bell once he leaves in free agency, and you get Jordan Howard for free. And you save cap space to go do something else if you want. So for the Steelers, now you've got Howard. The big potential red flag there is Howard is not the same pass-catching back that Bell is. So maybe Jalen Samuels can play that role. I don't think James Conner can. Maybe if you're Pittsburgh, you also go out and shop for a Amir Abdullah potentially to find another third down back to pair well with Howard because he's not the same dynamic player that Lev Bell is. But at least if you bring in Howard and you do decide to trade Bell, you get a player that you can lean on in the ground game. I think that's a key thing for them.
All right, so going through trades here, folks, that could happen but probably will not. Le'Veon Bell going to the Chicago Bears. More likely he actually walks into free agency there. All right, you guys are watching NFL Daily presented by Man Crates. Do you know an awesome guy who needs a gift at Man Crates? Gifts are carefully curated like a museum, but actually exciting. Jerky grams, project kits, and so much more. Mancrates.com. Awesome gifts guys love here, Sean.
If you need a birthday gift for the guy in your life, don't get him a tie. Nobody wants that. No one wears ties anymore. Get him a Man Crate instead. And while you're shopping, drop a hint. You can probably get one for yourself as well.
There you go.
If you play your cards right.
And we thank them for sponsoring the show here today. Talked a little bit about Le'Veon Bell. How about another big-time name out there? Perhaps a top 2 wide receiver, Julio Jones.
Well, this one makes a little bit more sense for some because he's holding out, has 3 years left on his deal. Atlanta, I think, understandably so, does not want to trade him or give him a new deal because he's got 3 years left.
Yeah, why would you?
That's a bad precedent to set. The flip side is you're going to have a very high asking price for Julio Jones because guess what? He's Julio Jones,
right.
And Atlanta's trying to win. If they were a bad football team, it might make more sense to trade away Julio Jones. But because they are on the precipice of winning a Super Bowl, you're going to have a tough time prying them away. But I came up with 2 deals that I think might just be enough.
This is fun,
Maybe.
Tom. All right, Atlanta and Tennessee. Falcons get Corey Davis in a first-rounder. The Titans get Julio Jones and cement themselves as a true Super Bowl contender.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Because at least if you're Atlanta, your mindset is, okay, if we're going to trade with Julio Jones, you're probably asking for multiple firsts or a really, really good young player or two. So you bring in a Corey Davis who, he's not Julio Jones. He's probably not going to be as good as Julio Jones, but he can potentially be a number 1 receiver for you, especially with Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu. All of a sudden, it's not the same as Julio, but it's still pretty good. And Corey Davis is cheap. So if you're the Falcons, You don't have to extend Julio Jones. You actually save some money. You can go pay a Grady Jarrett, pay somebody else as well, build out some depth. Yes, you lose your top-end receiver, but you do still have Corey Davis, who can help you out alongside Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu. It's not the same elite group, but it's still pretty darn good.
Meanwhile, for Tennessee, you got Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis in the backfield. You got Mariota at quarterback, and you have your #1 wide receiver in Julio.
You upgrade that receiver. Yes, it costs you a first-round pick, but you assume it's going to be a later first-round pick in this scenario. And then on the flip side, Mariota, Julio Jones is a great tandem. And yeah, you lose Corey Davis, but your absolute best-case scenario is that Corey Davis becomes a Julio Jones type of player. And probably a lesser version, a poor man's Julio, even though that's not exactly his best comp. But wouldn't you just rather have the real thing and send over a first-round pick? And Tennessee can afford to redo that deal if they want as well.
All right, so the Titans perhaps getting Julio Jones.
I think the Falcons say no in the end.
How about this one here? Back to the 49ers.
Yeah.
Jones going to San Francisco. The Falcons get Solomon Thomas, Trent Taylor, and a first-round pick.
So not as good in terms of the receivers, but you do get a slot guy to allow Ridley to play more on the outside. And then Solomon Thomas, who I think would be a fantastic fit for the Falcons on the interior of the defensive line. So at receiver, it's definitely not as good. There's a pretty steep drop-off now. Sanu and really are your top two. Taylor is maybe a decent #3 receiver down the road, maybe not necessarily in year 1 for them, but he's good enough. You still have Freeman and Tevin Coleman. You can get by with losing that. But for the Niners, of course, at receiver, well, hello there.
Wow.
Julio Jones, Marquise Goodwin, and Pierre Garçon.
That's fun.
That's a fun lineup. I couldn't agree more. And now you put Jimmy G there. Niners hype train off the charts there.
You got Kendrick Bourne, who's been getting some buzz out there in camp too. So that's a definitely good wide receiver core. And Dez Bryant, who, by the way?
Exactly. No more need for Dez Bryant because you just got a better player in Julio Jones. And then as for the Solomon Thomas pick, that kind of falls into the Corey Davis category. There's your potential young stud. This time, though, it comes on defense. Also, maybe gives you the flexibility to not overpay for a Grady Jarrett if that's the route that you want to go. Because Thomas comes in, Cam, I think he is miscast in the 49ers defense. They try to have him play the defensive end role on the outside. I think his best position is as a penetrating 3 technique at defensive tackle. He could do that with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he'd be a great fit there with Vic Beasley, with Takk McKinney, with Grady Jarrett. In terms of upside, you're going to have a tougher time finding a better foursome on the defensive line than if the Falcons were to bring in Solomon Thomas. Now, of course, if you're the Niners, you're a little bit concerned there about your edge rushing spots with him now playing the Leo role, but it's okay. You got Julio Jones. It's fine.
Yeah, all's good in the world when you get Julio Jones on your roster. We'll see. Probably not going to happen, but boy, would it break the internet.
Again, these are trades that could happen, but probably won't, and we're having fun with it, so just keep that in mind.
All right, so Julio Jones, couple of trade proposals for him. Let's go to the quarterback position.
Cam, I did this special for you.
Yeah, you know what?
And
I allowed this, though.
It was actually Cam's idea.
I allowed this because
this was Cam.
I want to tell you how ridiculous this actually is, in that this is the most least likely trade we will talk about the entire day.
It's the last one.
So Joe Flacco, why? Well, Lamar Jackson coming into his own. The Ravens want to get rid of that contract, so maybe Baltimore engages with the Miami Dolphins. The Ravens get Tannehill. The Dolphins get Flacco and a 5th rounder.
I remember I came to you, I'm like, Cam, I think I got to throw in a draft pick too. And he's like, good. You're like, good, the Ravens should get one. I'm like, no, dude, it's got to go to Miami. Because Tannehill's contract is set up in a way where they restructured his deal. His base salary is almost nothing. So the Ravens actually save like $10 million by doing this trade. The Dolphins take that on. They can barely afford it. I think from the Miami perspective, from Baltimore's perspective, you free up a more obvious path to playing time for Lamar Jackson. Tannehill's there for a year, and then he gets cut.
Stopgap.
He's on the road, and Lamar is the fit. And frankly, Cam, I mentioned this to you as well, Tannehill's probably a better fit for this modified Ravens offense that they want to run. Because former A&M wide receiver as well, he can actually move a little bit. That's not, that's not Joe's MO. As for the Dolphins side of things,
well, now they have an elite quarterback. So
well, there you go. Which he's not. We'll bring up that weigh-in though. My mindset was maybe they think Flacco is a better long-term fit and they can afford his contract. I'll be honest, Cam, I'm reaching here. The Dolphins hang up the phone.
This is like painful for you to utter right now, isn't it?
It's not a good trade idea.
Osweiler right behind Flacco, and then you have Fails.
There were only a handful of teams that could actually take on Flacco's contract and didn't have a clear-cut quarterback.
Can we change this to was Joe Flacco elite
The answer-
in the
the-
4 games of the playoffs?
The 4 games of the playoffs, the answer is yes. Beyond that, the answer is no.
Sorry, all
buddy.
right, that's fair.
The
Perhaps-
Dolphins say no.
Yeah, I think the Ravens say no, to be honest with you. But who
No,
the heck
they
knows?
Save so much money.
All right, those were some fun trade proposals, folks, that could happen, but we think definitely will not happen. So there you go.